Alright, hello gamers, Mugluck here, and Guild Wars 2 did an article recently with MMO.IT, which I think is Italian, because this article is translated from Italian to English. And there is some information in here that is not in some other stuff, and I thought it was pretty interesting, so going over it now. As always, there will be a link in the description if you wish to just see it yourself. Alright, let's talk GW2 Janthir Wilds, arena interview on the new expansion. After the retrospective, which I have gone over before on this channel, on Secrets of the Obscure and the announcement in early June of Janthir Wilds, the 5th expansion for Guild Wars 2 coming out on August 20th, excitement has reignited in the community of the title. There's a lot of curiosity for the arrival of various contents, including new story, raid, and the ability to use the spear on the ground. Does it kind of feel like embarrassing to have people like talk about your main game, be like, "Ooh, they figured out how to stab people." But above all, the introduction of Homestead, the new housing system that was described by our colleagues at PC Gamer. As the new expansion is approaching, in the last few days we had the pleasure of asking ArenaNet some questions, exclusively for Italy, about the new cycle of annual expansions, about the experience we had with Soto, and about the features of Janthir Wilds. Already available for pre-sale on the official website, or in my referral link. Below you can read the interview, first in the original language and then translated by us into Italian. Oh wait, no, maybe I had it backwards. Maybe it was in English and they translated it to Italian, and then someone gave me an Italian link and I translated it back to English. Answering our questions were the design lead of Janthir Wilds, Andrew Gray, and the technical director, Ben Newell. Let's get started. And then, is this just the expansion trailer? I am so sorry. Yes, that's just the expansion trailer. Okay. All right. Q&A with ArenaNet. Let's talk about Guild Wars 2 Janthir Wilds. The annual... Okay, I'm guessing the blue text is one person and the white is someone else. The annual development of expansions represents a major change from the past, and we think it has been a big challenge for the entire ANet team that, despite mistakes described in the Soto retrospective, has achieved good results. Compared to the Living World system and multi-year expansions, what are the positives that you will think you left behind? So, just to make sure everyone's included in the conversation, if you're a new player to Guild Wars 2, here's how it worked. When the game first came out, there was the base game. Then there was Living World Season 1, which was an event that could not be repeated later. It was when Lion's Arch was destroyed, and there was a new one that popped up in its place, which looks different, which is why, if you play the old story missions, like level 20, level 30, when you go to Lion's Arch, it looks completely different, because they didn't change it in those. It's just an interesting fun fact. Later, they did a Living World Season 2, which was like almost like mini DLCs. Then they did Heart of Thorns expansion, really big thing. They spent years on this. And then Living World Season 3, and then Path of Fire expansion, really big thing. They spent years on that. And then Living World Season 4, and then like 80 years passed, and then there was like the Iceberg Saga, End of Dragons. All right, so there was like big expansion thing that you would buy, and then free DLCs in Living World. And they were free. If you were an active player when Living World came out, it was free. But then if you didn't get it then, it got a price tag later. It was one of the weirdest pricing models I've ever seen. They charged you, they didn't charge you on the day where they would get the most customers, then they charged people who were slow later. I still to this day don't understand that pricing model. But that was the old system, and now they've changed it to no more Living World, no more big expansions, just a mini expansion every year. Okay. Andrew, the design lead. I'd say the biggest thing we lost was experience. We have years of experience making Living World seasons and the old multi-year expansion model. So when we set out to adjust to the annual expansion model, we had to relearn a lot of things like reasonable scope, complexity of story, and some of the more challenging logistics like production plans and voiceover pipeline. I think that VO is voiceover in this sentence, pipelines. Luckily, we learned a ton of work on Soto that we've already applied to Janthir Wilds, so we're already feeling back in the groove of things. And I've mentioned this before, that I don't know that Janthir Wilds will be a better expansion than Soto. I cannot say that with 100% certainty. But I am 100% certain that it will be easier on them to develop Janthir Wilds than Soto, because they will figure things out. Like, okay, we start work in January, and then Bob needs to finish his work to pass it off to Sally by February, and Sally needs to finish her work by March to hand it off to Fred, and then Fred's he takes like 4 months, so we've got to just plan everything to be really crammed on the second half of the year, because Fred takes forever. Yeah, like, they have to figure out the pipeline. Like, when do they finish writing the script so that they can contact Felicia Day and then pay her $1 billion to come in and then read the script of Zoja screaming, and then pass that on to the sound guys to plug that into the thing, and yada 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 yada. So there is like, you know, A has to be done before B, and so on and so on and so on. In SOTO, we saw the return of many ancient races, and with Janthir Wilds, we will see the Titans again. This has renewed a strong interest in past events, leading parts of the community to replay Guild Wars 1 to delve into the events that happened before today's. What is the idea behind choosing to have the world of Guild Wars 1 interact more concretely in Guild Wars 2? Is there a risk of repeating what happened with SOTO? A plot too complex for what can be reasonably handled within an annual expansion. So I am someone who played Guild Wars 1. However, I played it, and it was kind of like when you read a book at school and you don't really remember some of what you just read. I remember kind of enjoying playing my Necromancer and going unga bunga with like a tidal wave of zombies, because you could have like, you know, dozens of them if you just got rolling. And I remember enjoying the playstyle. The story didn't stick with me at all. I played it when I was younger, and it just, I definitely wasn't playing it for the story. I was enjoying the gameplay. And then Guild Wars 2 is the one that really got its hooks in me and didn't let go. And so I know lots of Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 1, I'm very vague on. So for that reason, the Titans, I myself was reading about the Titans recently. I couldn't remember what they were. And I was like, oh, it's those big things the Char are making like Wicker Men about and stuff like that. Okay. So even, you know, and this I think would apply to a lot of players. There are a lot of people that play Guild Wars 2 that either haven't played or don't remember Guild Wars 1, and they're going to need help with these plot points. And I count myself among that group. As far as a plot too complex for what can be reasonably handled with an annual expansion, you know, the word is with SOTO, it's not that what we got with SOTO was complex, it's that they maybe tried to make something too complex, and then SOTO was what we got, just to clarify that. All right, Andrew. The Wizards, predating Guild Wars for quite a long time, feel like a logical bridge to weave more of the threads from the original game, and possibly even earlier than that, into Guild Wars 2. That's the in-world answer. The development answer is some of us old-timers have been around long enough to have worked on Guild Wars, some as far back as Prophecies. That was the first vanilla Guild Wars. While others, and it makes me feel really dang old saying this, grew up playing Guild Wars, so with the Dragon Cycle arc finally complete, there's a lot of desire to go back to some original Guild Wars lore. As to avoid making a plot too complex to reasonably handle, that's a great call-out and has been at the forefront of our minds while developing Janthir Wilds. Excuse me, hiccup. It's challenging to dig into specifics without spoilers, but I know, trust me bro, isn't exactly a satisfying answer. So I will at least say that the bulk of the story is grounded in a regional threat in Janthir rather than a global threat. Or, in the case of SOTO, a transplanetary battle. The Cryptus caught the Astral Ward off guard, and so ratcheted up the threat level to 11 right off the bat, and now the Astral Ward is focused on preventing the next calamity rather than responding to it. And honestly, in some ways, this can feel... So a regional threat as opposed to a global. Just to explain that, just so everyone's on the same page again, a global threat would be, you know, like, friggin' aliens are coming to the planet and they're going to destroy the whole planet, right? A regional threat is the Char have another civil war going in Drizzlewood. And honestly, I think it's good to not have a global threat every single time, because it feels silly after a while, you know? In World of Warcraft, they're suffering with that a little bit, where it's like every single time they beat the big bad, they find out it was just a minion of the bigger bad. And now they're on the biggerest bad right now. You know, they've done that like 6 times. And it's just like, oh my gosh. And it just keeps going. So I think it's good to sometimes have problems that are a little bit closer to home. Always another old god? Yeah. Guild Wars 2, with its incredible art direction 12 years later, is still a pillar of the MMO genre, but in other aspects, its age is showing. A lot's been done over the years with DirectX and the introduction of many quality of life improvements, but there are parts of the game that seem obsolete. What aspects do you think need restructuring, and what would you like to work on in the future? Ben. We're constantly identifying aspects of the game to enhance with quality of life updates. For example, we believe we can improve guild hall decorations by making the interface for placing them more intuitive and powerful, allowing players to fully express their creativity. Upgrading to a newer version of DirectX has unlocked many possibilities for us. We're exploring these opportunities by prototyping and testing new shadow technology, lighting improvements, and advanced water, to name a few examples. All right. Convergences, introduced by SOTO, positively surprised the community. It reminded us of the famous raids of the past from different MMOs and made for larger numbers of participants. Unfortunately, over time in the genre, we have seen a tendency to focus on content for fewer and fewer players. Guild Wars 2, on the contrary, continued to believe in them. What were your reasons for betting on this type of content? With the addition of the Titans to Convergence, can we hope that they will continue their development like other endgame content such as Fractals, Raids, and Strength missions? Andrew, Design Lead. We see Convergences going forward as a great way to give players an open world experience that mirrors raid content, obviously with significant changes to make it appropriate as an open world fight. Raids are great, but far fewer people engage with them than open world content for a variety of reasons. We want to make raids for the people who enjoy raiding, so rather than trying to change raids to attract more of those players, so we see Convergences as a means to let more players experience the story, environment, and an open world version of raid encounters. But in a 50-person squad, or public group, rather than a 10-person squad, I would expect us to at least strongly consider adding 50-person Convergence versions of raids when we release raid wings going forward. That is very interesting. And there would be limitations on that. To give you an example, for those who have never raided, in my mind, there is two types of raid bosses. Easy ones and hard ones. The difference is this. On an easy raid boss, if you die, only you die. On a hard raid boss, if you die, you take everyone else down with you. So an example of a hard raid boss using those definitions is Deimos. If you stand in the oil, you can take the whole raid with you. Sabbatha, if you were supposed to go kill the cannon and you died, then the cannon didn't die and it kills the platform and kills the whole raid, right? Now, anyone who's raided for a long time is going to scoff at these examples. They're going to be like, dude, Mock, those fights are so easy. And you're right, because every fight in Guild Wars 2 is easy. What I mean by that is if you've got new players going in there, some of these, if you're in there with 50 people, you're not going to want to have the ladder. I cannot imagine, like, do you guys remember when the Dragon's End came out? And there was a mechanic on day one that if someone messed it up or a troll got it and they failed it, the entire instance failed. Okay? Some of you will know what I'm talking about. You don't want that with a massive number of people. You do not want something where when Billy messes up the Wisp, everybody fails. You want just, if Billy messes up, Billy dies. That's it. Nobody else. So this can be a very fun thing, but I don't see them, turning, something like one of those fights into that, where, you have one essential person doing an essential job, and if any of the 50 people not doing their essential job fail, the whole thing's over. Like that, then that gets insane. Okay, continuing on. That's my thoughts on that. Seeing the Warclaw out of the mist was a big hit, and we're sure it brought a smile to those PvE players who've always feared entering World v World to redeem it. Thanks to this choice, there will be another way to redeem it and use its new abilities. Can you give us any more details about the Warclaw's new abilities, such as double jump, and tell us why they are so important in the exploration of Janthir? Andrew, so there will be more info coming out on the Warclaw in coming weeks, so I don't want to spoil those reveals too much, but I will say air jump, which is what we're calling it now since double jump undersells the mechanic, makes navigating Janthir feel absolutely great. My first thought is, are they going to block flying? You know how in World of Warcraft, many times when they released a new expansion, you weren't allowed to fly there until you had met some requirements, so that you had to walk around and enjoy the landscape a bit before you just flew over everything. I wonder if they're going to block flying to make us use the Warclaw. They've never done that before. I'm not really anticipating that. I'm just kind of voicing my thoughts out loud right now. The region is not flat, to say the least, with many sheer cliffs and valleys that make you think, man, I wish I didn't have to go around the long way. The Warclaw provides ways to get around the jumps that I think players are going to really enjoy it. We didn't stop there. We found interesting ways to incorporate the existing World v World chain pull. That's my favorite move in World v World on the Warclaw. Spear throw and sniff abilities into the content in Janthir. Again, more details to come on that. So the Springer jumps up really high. The Raptor jumps forward really high. The Warclaw, I don't know what they're going to do there that one of those can't already do. Is it diagonal? We'll see, I guess. We'll see. Okay, housing has been one of the biggest revelations in Janthir Wilds. The community that has been asking for years is overjoyed because they thought this mode could not be implemented due to some technical limitations. What were the challenges encountered as introducing this new feature? Andrew, so the biggest hurdle when you sit down to start an ambitious feature can often be yourself specifically. One's ability to overwhelm oneself with everything something could be. I think that has made player housing seem like a non-starter for quite some time in many people's eyes because it's a feature that's going to have a lot of moving parts and can easily bloat into something out of scope, especially on an annual cadence like we are now. I'm going to warn you, this is going to be somewhat possibly boring. How the sausage is made details. But when we sat down to make homesteads, we broke it all down into what we call the MVP, or minimum viable product, and stretch goals. MVP is the foundation of the system that, even if we weren't able to add anything else to it, we could rationalize it as a strong enough benefit to players to be worth shipping. From there, we took everything else, all the nice-to-haves, quality of life improvements, cute little details, etc., and listed them as stretch goals, and then prioritized those goals based on the cost-to-benefit ratio, or how hard will it be to make, versus how much does this benefit the players. With this information in mind and the foundations of the system in a solid place, we were able to add nearly all of our stretch goals, and I attribute that to the build-up approach to design on homesteads that added features incrementally as needed rather than starting with a grand design that throws everything and the kitchen sink into the feature on day one. Though technically, there is a kitchen sink. There is a... What is it? Because I know Guild MM has it. There is a golden sink that's like... I don't know, 1,000 or 10,000 gold or something that you can buy to put in your guild hall, and I wonder if this is a reference to that. Mohanda says, why Guild Wars 2 is dead? It's not, Mohanda. You've got wrong information. It's actually near the peak of what it's been in the last 12 years. It's doing quite well. Speaking of the foundation of homesteads, the guild hall decorating system was used as half of that foundation, with the functionality of the home instance, resource nodes, boards, and of course the many stray cats you've adopted over the years, making up the second half. Oh, they are adding the cats. I'd heard rumor that they were, but I hadn't seen confirmation. Homestead decorating is a separate crafting discipline than scribing, but the decoration options and guild halls will appear as homesteads over the course of the expansion's future releases and festivals. We've made some really good improvements to the decorating system and a ton of other exciting features that we'll be sharing more about later this month. But for now, I can say a lot of the wish list items players are speculating about are in fact included in the feature, either at launch or in one of the content releases. There has been a lot of talk about new additions in the title in the past years, and one of those was jewel crafting level 500. Is it still on the to-do list? Andrew, Ascended level 500 jewel crafting isn't on the priority list right now, but we're always evaluating it, and if it's possible, we'll revisit this in the future. The question here, I think, is what would jewel crafting 500 give us that we don't already have access to? And if there's nothing it's going to provide that we don't already have, then it would just be kind of shoehorned in and it would be awkward. So I can understand them waiting until they've got something, like when they made Cooking 500, they made Ascended Feasts, for example. So jewel crafting 500, I don't know, I'd make Ascended Jewelry or something. Let's see. Okay, Q&A with ANet. Let's talk Guild Wars 2 Janthir Wilds. Wait. Oh. Is this... Okay, hold on. I think we might have just hit the end, but then it restarts. Now, I used a translator on this page, so I think what might have happened is past this point was the same article in another language, and it just translated to English because of how I was reading it. I'm just skimming it just to confirm. Yeah, there's the talk on Convergences, the Warclaw, Janthir Wilds, Heavy, and jewel crafting. We would like to thank ArenaNet and Drew Gray. Wow, dude, I was bracing myself. I thought I was only halfway through this because the size of the scroll bar on the right-hand side. All right, so we would like to thank ArenaNet, Andrew Gray, and Ben Newell for their availability at the time they kindly provided us, the Guild Wars 2 Italia Pessimismo and Fastidio page, and the Arco del Leon community for their collaboration. Written by Dresna the Stranger. All right, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So I think there was a few little nuggets of wisdom in there that they hadn't released on other stuff, so that's pretty neat. I'm very curious. Like, one, Warclaw having open world abilities does sound fun. But at the same time, I don't know how they're going to make it more useful than what we've already got with the Springer and the Raptor. But maybe it's just going to be an alternative. Because, like, for example, right now there are people that prefer to run around on the Jackal than the Raptor. Although it is slower, it is faster if you're going uphill, and it basically has safe fall. As long as you teleport right before you hit the ground, you're fine. So there's... definitely some interesting things here. I'm curious how they're going to make some of them happen, but as always, if you got any questions, problems, thoughts, concerns on what we just read, put it in the comment section down below, and I'll fight you there.